Hello, boys and girls. My name is Miss Hood, and I teach at Round County Middle School. I teach 8th grade American history, and this is Read Across America Week. And so today I'm going to read to you a book called Mr. Peabody's Apples by Madonna. We're going to talk throughout this book about using our words when we speak to one another, how we should choose them wisely. Mr. Peabody's Apples by Madonna. So we can tell by these pictures, obviously the sport maybe of baseball is important in this book. Very vivid pictures. In the town of Hattville, which wasn't a very big town, Mr. Peabody was congratulating his Little League team on a great game. They had not won, but no one really cared because they had such a good time playing. Mr. Peabody was the history teacher at the local elementary school, and in the summertime, he dedicated every Saturday to organizing baseball games with other schools. What's interesting is Miss Hood teaches social studies too, like Mr. Peabody. Billy Little, who wasn't a very big boy, was one of Mr. Peabody's students. He loved baseball more than anything, and he thought Mr. Peabody was the greatest. After each game, he would always stay to help pick up all the bats and all the balls. And when they were finished, Mr. Peabody would smile and say, "Thanks, Billy. Good job. I'll see you next Saturday." Here is Mr. Peabody. He's congratulating his Little League team on such a great game. Think about times that you might help your teachers out in the classroom. I know as a classroom teacher, I love when my students help me pick up markers and crayons. Then he would start his walk home along the main street of Hattville, which wasn't a very big street, waving hello to everyone he knew, and everyone would wave hello back. Along the way, he always passed Mr. Funkadeli's fruit market. Here, Mr. Peabody would stop and admire Mr. Funkadeli's fresh apples. He would pick out the shiniest apple, drop it in his bag, and continue on his way home. Across the street, Tommy Tittlebottom watched with his curiosity as Mr. Peabody walked away with an apple. "That's strange," Tommy said to himself. "Mr. Peabody didn't pay anyone for that apple." Tommy got on his skateboard and rushed to tell his friends. Here's a picture of Mr. Peabody. He's picking out the shiniest apple that he could find. The following Saturday, Mr. Peabody's team played another game, and they lost, as usual, but no one seemed to care because they had such a good time playing. Billy picked up the balls and bats, and Mr. Peabody set off on his walk home. He waved to everyone that he knew, and they waved back. Once again, he stopped outside of Mr. Funkadeli's fruit market, picked up the shiniest apple, and dropped it in his bag, and continued on his way. Across the street, Tommy Tittlebottom and his friends watched Mr. Peabody as they were amazed at what they saw. Mr. Peabody had not paid for his apple. They couldn't wait to tell all their friends, who would then tell their parents, who told their neighbors, who told their friends, all in the town of Hattonville, which wasn't a big town at all. You can see Tommy and his friends, they were amazed at what they were seeing. So Mr. Peabody, after every game, walks home, goes by this fruit market, picks up an apple, and drops it in his bag and doesn't pay for it. Or so, that's what Tommy thinks. That Saturday after that, Mr. Peabody was standing all alone on the baseball field, wondering where everybody was. And then he saw Billy walking toward him with a sad look on his face. "Hello, Billy. I'm glad you're here, but where's the rest of the team?" asked Mr. Peabody. Billy remained silent. "What is it, Billy?" he asked again. Billy didn't look up. "Everybody thinks you're a thief," he said to the ground. Mr. Peabody looked confused. He took off his hat and scratched his head. "Well, who says I'm a thief, Billy? And what did I steal?" he asked. "Tommy Tittlebottom and his friends said that they saw you take an apple from Mr. Funkadeli's fruit market twice, and they said that you didn't pay for them," answered Billy. "Ah," said Mr. Peabody, putting his hat back on his head. "Let's go and talk to Mr. Funkadeli about this, shall we?" You can see in this picture, Mr. Peabody is wondering, where are the players? Where is everybody? It's Saturday. I'm ready to play some baseball. And then you can see Billy, and Billy tells him the sad news that everybody thinks that Mr. Peabody is a thief. They walked down the main street, which wasn't a very big street, and Mr. Peabody waved to all the people he knew. Some of them did not wave back, and some pretended they didn't even see him. They finally arrived at Mr. Funkadeli's fruit market. Out popped Mr. Funkadeli, who said, "Hey, what are you doing here, Mr. Peabody? Why aren't you at the game?" "There isn't a game today," said Mr. Peabody, "and I was wondering if I could take my apple a little earlier than usual." "Well, sure, why not?" replied Mr. Funkadeli. "You pay for them every Saturday morning when you pick up your milk. You can take them when you like. You want the big shiny one, Mr. Peabody?" Mr. Peabody took his apple, smiled, and offered it to Billy. "I would like to take the apple, Mr. Peabody, but I have to go and find Tommy and explain everything," said Billy. "When you find him, ask him to come over to my house. I would like to speak to him too," replied Mr. Peabody. So here's Mr. Peabody. Clearly, it's been a misunderstanding. He offers the apple to Billy, and Billy runs to get Tommy. A little while later, Billy found Tommy and told him what happened with the apples. He told Tommy that Mr. Peabody wanted to speak to him right away. So off Tommy ran, and when he arrived, he rang the doorbell, and Mr. Peabody came to the door. They looked at each other for a while. "Oh dear, Mr. Peabody," said Tommy on the doorstep. "I didn't understand. I should not have said what I said, but it looked like you hadn't paid for those apples." Mr. Peabody's eyebrows went up a little, and he felt a warm breeze blow across his face. "It doesn't matter what it looked like. What matters is the truth." Let's think about that, boys and girls. What does it mean to tell the truth? It's always very important that we tell the truth to our parents, to our teachers, and to our friends. Tommy looked down at his shoes and said, "I am so sorry. What can I do to make things better?" Mr. Peabody took a deep breath, looked up at a small cloud that was in the sky, and said, "I'll tell you what, Tommy. Meet me at the baseball diamond in 1 hour and bring a pillow stuffed with feathers." "Okay," said Tommy, who ran off to his house to get a pillow. You can see right here, here is Mr. Peabody's house, and there's Tommy. He rode his skateboard, and he's ringing the doorbell, and he's there to apologize. So I wonder what Mr. Peabody's going to do with a pillow with feathers. So an hour later, Tommy met Mr. Peabody on the pitcher's mound. "Hello, Tommy," said Mr. Peabody. "Follow me and bring your pillow." Tommy followed Mr. Peabody to the top of the bleachers, wondering what this was all about. "It's a windy day, isn't it?" asked Mr. Peabody. When they reached the top, Tommy nodded his head in agreement. "Here's a pair of scissors. Now cut the pillow in half and shake the feathers out." Tommy looked confused, but did it anyway. He thought it was a small price to pay to gain Mr. Peabody's forgiveness. The wind carried the thousands of feathers far and wide. So we can see we've got Mr. Peabody here, we've got Tommy, they've met. He gives him instructions to go to the top of the bleachers. And at the top of the bleachers, he cuts the pillow open, and all the feathers, you see all the little feathers, little white feathers, are being carried far and wide. Tommy looked relieved and said, "Is that all I have to do to make things better?" "There is one more thing," said Mr. Peabody. "Now you must go and pick up all the feathers." Tommy frowned. "I don't think it's possible to pick up all the feathers," Tommy replied. "It would be just as impossible to undo the damage that you have done by spreading the rumor that I am a thief," said Mr. Peabody. "Each feather represents a person in Hatfield." There's Tommy as he's watching these feathers go up in the air. There was a long pause as Tommy began to understand what Mr. Peabody was saying. Finally he said, "I guess I have a lot of work ahead of me." Mr. Peabody smiled and said, "Indeed you do. Next time, don't be so quick to judge a person, and remember the power of your words." Then he handed Tommy the shiny red apple and made his way home. And there it is. Mr. Peabody is walking, and you can see there's a couple feathers right there. The end. So the purpose of this book, boys and girls, Mr. Peabody's Apples, is to remember the power of our words when we talk to one another, and that you have to choose words wisely and carefully, so that we do not cause harm to others. And think about what Tommy thought he saw. In reality, it was not the case, because Mr. Peabody wasn't a thief, but he had convinced the town of Hatfield, which wasn't a big town at all, that he had stolen an apple. And so the feathers represented the people of Hatfield. And it's very important that we think before we speak, and we choose our words wisely. I hope you have a wonderful week. It's Read Across America Week. Again, it's very important that you grab a book off the shelf and you read one at least once a day. All right. It was nice reading this book to you. I hope to see you soon.